Let's go live. It's week 16. We're here to help you, or maybe to give you someone to blame when it all goes wrong. It may have started to go wrong. We'll try to fix
Are you
it.
are you singing this to like lullaby?
No, to the Star Spangled Banner, which is kind of like
Oh,
a lullaby, right?
kind of is. You know what two songs are kind of similar?
What's
The
that?
old 70s This Bud's for You
Uh huh.
and Frosty the Snowman.
Oh, very
I
nice.
think it's a little insidious, to be
I
honest
was
with
here
you.
listening to Frosty the Snowman in Spanish yesterday, and I thought it was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer for a second. So that's where
Oh,
my brain is. It's all blending together because it's week 16, because it's upon us. Dr. Jene Bramel, Matt Waldman, Sigmund Bloom, and again, this is kind of like Thanksgiving week where you already have information from the first three games. You already know if you're behind the eight ball, if you're an underdog. Things continuing to change. Even you may have went to sleep wondering if you were going to have Derrick Henry, if Dion Lewis was any use, and now you know. At least let's start there, Dr. Gene. We know that Derrick Henry is out for this game. What can you extrapolate from the severity of his hamstring injury for those people with Week 17 Super Bowls, and just as an NFL story?
Just that we know that it wasn't fully right. You didn't see him get up to full speed really at any point in the last couple of weeks, and he was going to play through it unless he was told not to. And after the Texans won yesterday, he was told not to. You downrate him to questionable, but when that happens and you know that there's very little reason for them to put Henry in harm's way when they know they need that Week 17 game for sure for AFC tiebreakers, and this game means not much unless Pittsburgh loses twice and Indianapolis loses twice, that, Dion Lewis is reasonably capable. New Orleans is a very strong offensive team. Are you going to be able to keep up with them with Derrick Henry anyway? No. So, you make him inactive and you remove the risk that this. I don't think there's any chance that there was some sort of aggravation on Friday in practice. He wasn't on the game status report at all. So he should be good to go for next week, but not going to play this week.
Okay, Matt, confidence level in Dion Lewis. I have him roughly around DeAndre Washington. 2-3 years ago, this would be magnificent. I don't know that Dion Lewis is the player we saw help us win titles. I think even last year or 2 years ago, he had a magnificent game in Week 16 for, was it the Patriots? Anyway, what about Dion Lewis 2019 Titan in Week 16 against the Saints?
Yeah, I think at this point you look at it as kind of one of those situations where anyone who tells you, sorry, Bloom, but anyone who tells you what we think we know about this player, we
Right.
haven't seen enough touches from him at
Right.
this point to really say. So I would more go along the lines of, remember what he was like in New England. Now he's going to get enough touches for us to see whether or not he can produce on that level or near that level. And if he produces at near that level, then he's better than DeAndre Washington. So I think DeAndre Washington gives you a higher floor. But I think that it's not so much higher that you ignore Lewis's volume and ceiling.
How much, Matt, does this give you pause for Ryan Tannehill, for A.J. Brown, for Johnny Smith, knowing that the Titans have absorbed that this game doesn't matter?
That this game doesn't matter for them? I mean, I guess from that perspective, you could see where they may rest those guys a little earlier. They
Just
sub more
not,
guys in.
subconsciously, just not bring it,
I don't think Ryan Tannehill is the type of person who's going to not bring it after what he's been through. I think that's
fair. That's fair.
I just think that, if he was not going to bring it, then he would have not brought it, at Miami and tried as hard as he did. So there's that. AJ Brown's just excited that he's out playing pro football right now and probably trying to gun for, to finish the season strong. So I think this team also sees it's in a situation where they want to be able to have, that dirty word again, momentum heading into the postseason. So I think they're going to want to play well, and this is going to be a big game for them. I think if they get down early in a big way, that would be something. But I'm not counting on that. I think that they're going to play New Orleans tough.
And New Orleans, of course, this game means a lot to New Orleans. The 1, 2, and 3 seeds in the NFC still undecided, and there's all kinds of permutations depending on which teams finish at 13-3. So the Saints are going to be full effort. Real quick on Dion Lewis, just revisiting this real quickly, Matt. Like, what about Dion Lewis versus Philip Lindsay? Just I want your gut reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at Philip Lindsay, and I think you play him. You play
Okay,
Philip
so I mean,
Lindsay, all right?
I'm looking at these guys as like so Dion Lewis is still not someone that you're trying to shoehorn into your lineup if you have to put him in for a Derrick Henry. Now, what do you advise for people that are looking at Alvin Kamara, looking at how he's been playing, looking at the numbers he's been putting up, and whatever the other side of the decision is? I mean, I'm not playing Dion Lewis or DeAndre Washington over Alvin Kamara or anything like that, but just they're looking at their decision. And again, if you're here alive in week 16, I said yesterday, if you're alive in week 16, you should not be substituting the judgment of any fantasy football expert, I'm making air quotes, for your own judgment, because your judgment got you here.
We've been saying that for weeks.
Yeah, and
really.
especially in week 16, your judgment is good. And if your judgment is looking at Alvin Kamara and some other option, maybe as a flex, maybe as a running back too, and saying, I just don't know. Are you telling people, hey, trust the reputation, trust the name, trust the offense, trust the touchdowns this offense has been producing? I'm going down with the ship with Kamara. Are you saying, no, your instincts are probably right. Maybe he belongs on your bench.
I think that's really you need to trust your instincts. I'll just put it that way, because
so if they said I'm thinking of benching Kamara, you're not going to say, no, that's a bad idea.
No, because I'm going to trust that you got here by making most of your own choices and not asking people for answers to the test every single week, because most likely the people who do that tend to ask about a dozen different people and mix and mash it, and then they miss it, and they don't really know what's going on. So
it's not clearly the wrong decision to put Kamara on the bench today.
No, but I would say this. I would say most of you are probably not going to do that. But if you're thinking about it, you have a compelling reason.
Yeah. And I mean, and then, just you're looking at that trailing 3 or 4 weeks coming in as a better prediction of the range of outcomes for a player than the whole season, or than what we put in a player in terms of ADP and things like that. Okay, Gene, let's just fast forward.
Let me just add one little thing. Yeah, if you aren't one of those people and now you're wanting to wish you had an answer with it, look at it this way. Alvin Kamara is getting steady volume. If you're going to try and shoehorn a player in over Kamara that you're not sure is going to get the same volume that Kamara is, stick with Kamara.
Yeah, but where it gets tough, well, here's one of the data points, and let's just skip to Monday night, Gene. It's fun. I mean, whatever happens tomorrow night, everyone will remember this. I think it was Peter Overzet who's had some great one-liners and added some fantastic lightheartedness to fantasy while still being on point, saying something like, this Boone Madison stuff is tearing our nation apart. Mike Boone, Gene, Alexander Madison, and there's kind of like 3 lanes here. One is Madison will play, and because the Vikings are forcing him back on the field, it seems they're going to force touches to him, and it's going to ruin the Boone party. Lane number 2 is Madison will be active, but really not a non-factor on Boone's outlook. Lane number 3 is he's going to be inactive. Which lane?
Well, lane 1 and lane 2 are so slim that you can't fit your car into them, so it's all lane 3. So is there a chance that they put Madison on the active roster in case of emergency break glass sort of situation? I suppose that's possible. But we're talking about a player that, I think by video, as we talked about earlier this week, high ankle sprain, is only made 1 practice. There was individual drills only. We've got good, trustworthy local writers that say he didn't do much in practice, and he didn't look like, I think the term was, didn't have a bounce in his step at all. Mike Boone was effective last week. This is another weird week 16 situation where the Vikings have clinched a playoff spot. There's really not a lot to do. Why, if you're not sure what you're going to get out of Dalvin Cook? And again, I don't think anybody knows exactly what that injury was. It looked like it was an arm thing, and then it was kind of described as a shoulder. They listed him as a chest. It's the opposite side. Maybe he could have played, but he certainly doesn't look like he's been comfortable the last couple of weeks. Why do you want to risk Madison, who has been productive in Cook's absence, if there's a high ankle sprain that can easily be tweaked and become another 3 to 4 week situation where you won't have him for the wild card game? So it makes no sense for me for him to be active with the depth chart that they have there right now, and with Mike Boone looking healthy and effective in the times that he's played a couple of times this year, including last week. So I know it's not been official yet, and the trend has certainly become much more pessimistic over the last 24 hours for Madison after the limited Friday practice, but I don't see a scenario in which he plays unless something happens, half the running back depth chart that's left over gets sick going into Monday night, and then you are where you are. But Madison is, even if he plays, he's not getting 10 to 12 carries and effective touches. That's not happening either, most likely in this type of scenario. So I wouldn't have Madison anywhere near my lineup. Maybe you have him if
right
as a hedge somewhat, but I don't think lane 1 and 2 are likely at all.
Okay, Matt. So in the interest of full disclosure, first of all, I may not be trustworthy on Mike Boone because I've been holding Mike Boone on so many rosters. And I feel like this is one of those moments like confirmation bias, like we're going to see tomorrow night that Mike Boone is 90% of Dalvin Cook. Cook called him his clone. And in this running game and against the Packers, now, of course, Minnesota clinches a playoff spot. So if we're talking about subconscious motivation, Minnesota, I think, is, basically, I don't know about the 5th seed versus 6th seed, but I'm pretty sure they're locked into the 6th seed for all intents and purposes. But for Mike Boone, you talked about personal motivations. I mean, how much more personal motivation could there be for him, et cetera, et cetera? But I'm probably exuberant about Mike Boone, right? But at the same time, when I'm in 2 finals, in one of my finals, because Deshaun Watson did nothing, I thought I needed to play it safer. My opponent had Deshaun Watson in, so I put Boone on the bench for James White, forgetting that Rex Burkhead was going to be peak Rex Burkhead and eat the James White cake. It was there for a receiving running back. So I feel like, Matt, I am sure that I'm going to lose my championship by the difference between Boone and White. And that tells me to tell everyone, put Boone in so that my misery can become your joy. All this emotional stuff aside, how aggressive are you being with Mike Boone? When you're getting questions, Boone or kind of questions, Matt, how often are you saying Boone?
Probably about 85, 90%. So I would definitely roll with Boone. I think he's got a borderline running back 1 profile for you this week. Shouldn't worry, mainly because he's running behind a really strong offensive line. He may be the 3rd string running back. He may be the 3rd best running back on this team, but they have a good running back depth chart. And they have a very strong offensive line, and they have an offense that's predicated on wanting to use a lot of play action,
establish the run,
things like that. Yeah. So that's all really good. And I mean, really, Rex Burkhead is like the poster boy for that group of people, because they all love to see they all love themselves some Rex Burkhead.
Oh, yeah.
And he does well about once every 3 years, I think. So, yeah. I mean, and it always appears at the right time. So this is the right time for Rex Burkhead. I think Bill Belichick is one of those monkey wrench type of people too. So he just epitomizes all that.
He does. Okay.
Number 1 public enemy, number 1 for week 16 fantasy players right there.
Yeah. Or just fantasy players in general in some ways. Okay, Matt, let's just do again, so we can try to cover all the names or as many as we can of the people that folks that people are agonizing for, players. Okay, since we're on Minnesota and Green Bay. Okay, and I like how you just said 85-90% Boone. I mean, that gives us just like a baseline of whether you're, again, I like to do the cold, cool, lukewarm, warm, hot. Let's look at this game. Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, I think Aaron Rodgers, I would say lukewarm.
So, I mean, I'll give you a couple data points. Just react to me, okay? Aaron Rodgers or Carson Wentz against Dallas?
I would probably go Carson Wentz. I hate that, but yes.
Aaron Rodgers or Kyler Murray against Seattle?
Kyler Murray.
Yeah, so Rodgers is not an automatic start.
No, he's a high-end quarterback 2, low-end quarterback 1.
Really quickly, and I mean, because we could easily spend an hour on the Mike Boone or questions, okay? Mike Boone or Aaron Jones?
Mike Boone.
Yeah, we're there. Okay, and I know that you're probably biased here, but I'm still going to give it to you because there was a break point in the Mike Boone questions where I had to hesitate, and this was one of the places where I just hesitated. I'm probably going to agree with Matt on this. Mike Boone or Nick Chubb?
Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's bad juju. I probably would still stick with Aaron Jones too. I mean, it's just tough though. I have this I won't go that far. Okay, on the Minnesota side, Stephon Diggs.
Start. I would say Stephon Diggs is probably. I would say he's probably hot. I would probably go with him.
Stephon, and then what about Adam Thielen?
Probably cool.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of a "what have you done for me lately" thing, and I've been talking about fear of missing out, FOMO, what the kids say, or the acronym, and it's like I'm not fearing missing out anything that Adam Thielen has or
Listen,
hasn't been
I'm
doing.
starting him, but that's because I have all but 3 receivers on injured reserve this week, and he happened to be lucky enough to come off of it, or come off of the injury report. So that's the only reason I'm starting, is because there's nobody else. So
Yeah, in some ways, and that's one of the things too. By the way, I think that with the Derrick Henry, being sat probably saved people from playing him and being disappointed. Okay, speaking of playing him and being disappointed, Gene, Dak Prescott, they're playing him. We're going to be disappointed if we're counting on the Cowboys passing game today.
I think probably yes. The upside for Prescott is that Philly's secondary has been not good, and their pass rush has been a little bit of a struggle too. But this is, and maybe the video doesn't match with what the Cowboys are telling us, but regardless of what it is, he's got a throwing shoulder injury in which he did not want to throw the ball last week, didn't do much throwing at all in practice. The Cowboys have to have this game. So he was going to play no matter what, but just because they've taken him off the injury report and that says he's going to play, it doesn't say he's going to be effective. So I think accuracy, downfield arm strength, all of those things are going to be issues. If he takes another hit on the shoulder or turns his body and his shoulder hits the ground, there's likely to be an aggravation there that causes at least some measure of issue for the successive plays and maybe even ensuing series. So I would not feel good about Prescott being anywhere near where his previous ceiling could have been, even against a relatively nice Philadelphia matchup. So I'm concerned. This is a situation where you got a player off the game status report, but you think almost in any other situation, he'd probably be questionable or maybe even missing a week if the injury is as significant as you make it sound.
All right, Matt. This is tough because Gene did a good job outlining it. On one hand, you have the fact that we know the Dak Prescott shoulder is not right. I mean, there's just no way that you would handle a player like this going into a game that is a playoff game if there wasn't something compromised there. But it's also Philadelphia's secondary, and he throws to some talented guys. Dak Prescott in your lineup, and then the trickle-down effect, Amari Cooper, maybe Michael Gallup on the fringe there of wide receiver 3 flex. Dallas passing game temperature check today at Philly.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dak Prescott's still a high-end quarterback 2, low-end quarterback 1.
But like some of the guys we're talking about, Wentz, Murray, Rodgers.
I'd put him above pretty much everybody but Murray. I maybe put Wentz above him. I'd say Wentz is one that I wouldn't blame you for putting Wentz above him, but I wouldn't be surprised if Prescott, has a good enough day that, against that Philadelphia secondary where he can throw quick hitting passes and they can get a lot of yards after the catch against these guys. And he ends up having a bigger yardage day than you'd expect for somebody who's having some issues. But I would start Murray over him easily.
Yeah, it's tough because I think no matter what happens with Prescott, you're going to feel like I should have known. If he only throws 22 passes, but 18 completions for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, you'll say I should have known. And if he only throws 22 passes and completes 11 of them for 150 yards, you're going to say I should have known. And some of this comes down to Dallas on the road. That's the other thing. Dallas has been a Jekyll and Hyde team this year. Philadelphia has had their moments. This is a really tough game to project. On the Philly side, Matt, and I think we know Boston Scott's kind of fun to talk about, but he's basically like a 10 to 15 point PPR play. Probably not anymore, but probably not less. The guy I'm fascinated with in this game is Greg Ward, just because I'm curious about the psychological effect of Ward not doing much in this game last week until the final drive, and he did everything really. I mean, he was the guy. I mean, Wentz, with the game on the line, Wentz kept going to Ward. Ward kept getting open. Ward kept making catches. Ward looked competent. And I'm thinking about the momentum carrying over here. And that Dallas was able to take away Zach Ertz in the first game, only had 2 for 38. I'm finding myself every pass through my rankings and projections, Matt, talking myself into Greg Ward more this week. Are you going to talk me out of him?
No, I'm not going to let you talk. I'm not going to talk you out of it, but I'm also not going to talk anybody into it either. So if you have a feeling about him and feel like you've been following him well enough, that's fine. I don't think he's an especially strong receiver. I think he's developed enough to at least get an opportunity because everybody in that walks into
Right.
Philadelphia's in a training room. But at the same time, and it's the end of the game, and he's going to the guy that is getting open, or is the only one left open, or is the only guy that the defense is giving. So I'm not exactly, convinced that Greg Ward is like making an impact on a level that you would go nuts about. And I'll just add this, just because I love tweaking Dallas fans. But
don't we all?
If you're a Cowboys fan and you're wondering whether you should start Dak Prescott or not, the answer is don't, because you all hate him anyway. So why are you going to do the whole agony of it in the first place? If he scores well, then
Right.
he'll just continue to defy the way you've been thinking about him for the past year and a half, 2 years anyhow. So it won't be anything new.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that too. Maybe it's because I'm kind of an emotional. This is a real on the couch thing where I feel like if Prescott plays well and they win, you should be, as a Cowboys fan, happier than whatever would happen to your fans.
I think we should conduct a couch with you on the couch.
Always. Oh, I do. That's my life, basically. That's the whole thing. So, I'm looking at that emotionally. Like, if I was a Cowboys fan, I would bench Prescott. So that way, if something bad happened to my team because he isn't good, then I would have a consolation prize. This is, really, this is a real on the couch thing because, y'all have heard me say how my most, just like painful sports memory. Y'all remember? Have you ever talked about this? My most painful sports memory. I bet Gene could guess it. It was Francisco Cabrera.
Oh, of course.
I had tickets to World Series games 1, 2, 6, and 7. And in this theory that I'm talking about, I was a stock boy at Foodland in Bentleyville, and my boss he would ask us. We were in high school, and he still asked us, like, "Do you want me to put any bets in with the bookie?" And I thought, I'm gonna bet on Atlanta, so that if the Pirates lose Game 7 again, I'll have something as a consolation. And instead, what I have as a consolation is pain and trauma and scars. So let's try to help some people not have that. This week, Gene, Juju Smith-Schuster is going to play. Not on the injury report, but he's not 100%.
Correct.
So,
and there was some reports from the local media this morning that said they're going to have to watch and see how he feels, with the suggestion that there's still enough pain there that if he doesn't feel right earlier in the game, that maybe we may see what happened last week during practice this week in game action. As he said, and we're seeing more and more players acknowledge this year, that game speed and game trauma is totally different than individual reps and walkthroughs and 11-on-11 drills during practice, especially this time of year when teams are doing less and less full sessions. So risky there. Also, he's not played in 5 weeks. You wonder what his conditioning is like.
Right.
There's some upside there. Juju is Juju, but there's not a lot of optimism. I wouldn't think that he's going to hit a ceiling expectation.
Matt, is there anybody? This is a simple question, right? Is there anybody in the Steelers-Jets game that you'd be inclined to nudge people to play on either side?
No, I don't think
right?
I would. I really don't think I would. And Robbie Anderson is a dart throw just because he's good enough to be able to win some targets. But no, I would be looking elsewhere most of the time.
Yeah, I think that with the Steelers, and this includes James Conner, with the Steelers, they're just whether Juju plays or not. Now, if Juju doesn't play, James Washington and Deontay Johnson becomes more interesting, because you would think the Jets are a funnel defense to the Steelers passing, and there's some matchups there that Washington and Johnson can win, and Devlin Hodges is going to be aggressive, hopefully, throwing the ball as he has been. On the Jets side, your theory would be, as I often like to say, the Steelers, if they don't get home with the pass rush, someone's probably open. And that could be Robbie Anderson. Gene, what's the deal with Joe Hayden? Should we consider him good old Joe Hayden this week, or is there a chance that maybe he's not 100%?
I'd lean towards saying he's pretty close to being full strength.
Yeah, and Jamison Crowder is warm coming into this game. Le'Veon Bell, I'm not saying to bench Le'Veon Bell, but let's go to some data points, Matt. Le'Veon Bell or Mike Boone?
Oh, Mike Boone.
Yeah. So, I mean, what about Le'Veon Bell and like the likes of DeAndre Washington and Dion Lewis?
I would probably go with those other two guys just because of the fact that, not because Le'Veon Bell's bad, but because the offense is not very good around him.
Adam Gase. That's one of the takeaways. When we think of what we learned, by the way, Matt, I think it's Christmas Eve, but I think we're going to get together for an hour for one last couch of 2019. And we're going to talk about what we learned. And one thing we got confirmed is that, Adam Gase, he is that bad. Let's see. Moving on in the slate today. Let's see. T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton. I'm finding myself recommending T.Y. Hilton the way I would in a typical week.
Sure. I'm with that.
So, Matt, we see some corresponding data here, too. Some info. Jacoby Brissett and Frank Reich had a conversation this week. They decided to put some new stuff in the pass offense. Now, I think the time to have this conversation was like 4 weeks ago when they were still in the playoff picture. I don't understand doing it in week 16. I mean, I think it's nice. I also think if this stuff clicks and Jacoby Brissett looks great, it actually could skew. Just as a quick aside, I saw an Ian Rappaport tweet this morning about how some teams, Cleveland's going to keep Kitchens unless it goes really badly today. Atlanta's totally undecided, apparently. And Jacksonville leaning towards keeping Marone and company. And with this idea that what the teams do in week 16 and 17 will somehow move the needle, that seems crazy to me. You already have all the data you need. If you're so close that week 16 or 17 could push you one way or the other, then you're lacking the clarity to be a leader of an organization. You should already know whether you're keeping these guys or not. And likewise, I would think that if you're open to saying we need to make changes, you do it when there's still something on the line. But can you tell I'm feeling it this morning? Matt, new concepts in the passing game, excitement. So that's another reason to nudge you towards playing T.Y. Hilton. How do you feel about checking into the Hilton this week?
Well, I have no choice because he's also the other only healthy receiver I have. Him and Thielen trying to defend a championship with those two guys and Mike Thomas. That's about the only guy I have.
I think you could do worse than Michael Thomas, T.Y. Hilton, and Adam Thielen.
I could.
Even though they've not been there the past 6 weeks. I think that'll be all right. Those guys got a little talent.
Yeah, but watch Steven Sims and Greg Ward and Danny Amendola.
That's the question that they have.
Well, that's the other side of that coin. But it's not because that Hilton and Thielen are bad players. It's because
they're
Ward
not
and Sims and Amendola is the only thing left for everybody else to put out there on those offenses too.
They're all
week 16.
But really? I would say, but yeah, certainly I think that as long as Hilton's healthy enough to play, then I'm okay with that, whether the offense is new and improved, new Coke, or something else along those lines. I just think it's one of those situations that it's just kind of mind-boggling anyway. All I know is that we need to have a meme of you with like a baby spoon trying to spoon feed Gene and Gene doing this.
No.
I like
Gene
that. That was kind of fun. Yeah.
I bet Gene was a really good baby. I bet Gene was like, oh, he's so good. He doesn't cause any problems. While we're on this Carolina-Indianapolis game, Matt, Marlon Mack, how persuasive is it to you to think about, well, first of all, Carolina's run defense is terrible, and Gene Jack Thompson out this week?
Yeah, again, this is a week where players were getting. A lot of times you see this in week 17, but it's happened earlier and earlier. Players that have been through really rough injuries and found a way to maintain their practice reps, limit them a little bit and then come back and play. I'm not aware that there was an aggravation to Thompson last week. Maybe there was, but from a player that went from not practicing much and then playing to off the active roster altogether is a concern.
So Marlon Mack against the Carolina run defense that was already bad. Get on that 5-ish if you're watching the Baby Gene meme. And also he's 81 yards away from 1,000 yards. Tell me, Matt, whether you even pay attention to things like that at this time of year. I know that I think Baltimore trying to get Ingram 1,000 yards today is also something to think about if you're on Ingram or looking at DFS. Marlon Mack, confidence level, and again, we can locate him in with Deion Lewis and DeAndre Washington and these running backs we've been talking about. Mack today.
Yeah, first of all, do I pay attention to a 1,000-yard type of thing? Only to the extent of maybe 2 to 3 more carries than what you might get before. Because if they're not close and the game's not close, they're not going to sit there and push that agenda. But if they're within 3 to 4 carries of that happening, then yes, you're going to see that kind of go down. I do think that Mack is a good play today, obviously, just because of the fact that he is playing a horrific rush defense there. And then, and we'll go from there. I'm really, this game, I'm most interested in just getting a chance to see rookie Will Grier get a chance.
Exactly. So that's where I was going to go with this. DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel is going to play.
Yes, and I was wondering if he was in the same category as Shaq Thompson, but it looks like, at least according to Ian Rappaport, that he's expected to go.
So should people with DJ Moore, because you're probably not going to play Curtis Samuel, although it wouldn't shock me if Curtis Samuel has 2 long touchdowns this game because Will Grier is going to be a better downfield passer than Kyle Allen. I'm not saying to play Curtis Samuel. He's just more of like a blow up the Death Star if you need a 25-point play out of 3 or 4 guys, he's the one who at least has that in his range of outcomes. What about DJ Moore? Should Will Grier being in affect your decision matrix on Moore today?
I think it should affect your decision matrix on both wide receivers in a positive way. And I would start Curtis Samuel in some leagues. And now, if we're doing the two wide receiver leagues, no. But, again, if you're looking for more of a flex and you have multiple flex options, he's a worthwhile play because Will Grier has excellent timing downfield in terms of the go routes that Samuel is very good at. DJ Moore is pretty darn good at those routes too, as long as you're not asking him to go up and win the ball in the air, even though he's gotten better at that. But the best thing about Will Grier's game is that he hits people in stride, whether it's the middle of the field or whether it's up the rails. And so he's been very good at that. The issue is, does he have the rapport with these receivers who he hasn't worked with pretty much all year? And the question, and that's going to be the iffy thing, is you can't just sit there and go, well, he had that at West Virginia with receivers for 2-3 years, and he's suddenly going to come in week 16 and show that. That's a tough scenario. Then again, Patrick Mahomes came in week 16 and, made people just kind of, I was hysterical with laughter watching him do some things in week 16 of his rookie year that was like, I can't believe that he's playing this well against Denver's defense. So it's possible. I think you still play him because I think that it's not going to be the deep ball may be the thing that has the biggest impact of whether or not the rapport is there. But I think the middle of the field, the short game is still going to be a positive for Grier, and he may be playing from behind early on and racking up a lot of yards just from a garbage time standpoint. And I think that he has a chance to do that. I wouldn't even be surprised if Will Grier has a really strong game this week. And I've kind of posed that in our roundtable saying, was this a genius call or an insanity call to start Will Grier in your championship week? You just wanted to see what people would say. And usually you're going to get the conservative. It's absolutely crazy. But we did get a couple people who had enough guts like Dan Hendry to step up and say, I could see how that's happen. A viable play. And especially we look at the Romeo Crennel theory versus Drew Lock, that it could happen also with the Colts.
Yes, and also because Will Grier, if we watch it back at West Virginia, I think both of us liked him, Matt.
I had him rated my number one quarterback, just slightly above Kyler Murray in terms of potential. So
it's because he hasn't seen a throw he doesn't want to try.
Pretty much. Yeah, no.
That's good for
aggressive.
fantasy. Yeah, and that's good for fantasy this week because he's not going to go out and unless the coaches just drill into his head like, don't turn the ball over. Because we have a whole backstory of. Obviously, Grier had fallen out of favor with the coaches. Now Ron Rivera's not there anymore. But
this is a narrative that's very important to talk about that I think that needs to be debunked and basically blown up to smithereens, which is the whole quarterback's not ready right away. Right. Therefore, he must not be very good. They made a mistake with him. Listen, Russ Landy went on in a podcast that we did recently in RSP Scout Talk, talking about how with Wentz and Goff, before the draft, these teams interviewed both guys and they concluded that Goff was the more ready guy right away and that Wentz was going to need a year. Then when they brought him into camp and had them like within the first month in the facility, after that first month, they completely 180'd their opinions. But what NFL teams feel about these players is much different than what you hear from the tabloid media, okay? Which is basically the tabloid media likes to go, oh, he's not going to play this year. They don't think he's ready. This is huge news. Why would you draft a guy in the first round or second round and feel that way? When coaches and scouts feel differently than owners and GMs, they tend to look at these players and go, we really don't know what we're going to get until that first month. And they may not be ready. That doesn't mean that we don't think their talent is strong. They just may be slow at acclimating to what the offense is requiring them to do, the memorization aspect, just integrating everything together. And it may take a little bit more time. And we have already kind of baked into our assessment of any quarterback that they may need a year of development, even though we may say publicly otherwise.
And my only where I was going to go with this, Matt, was it's not a meritocracy. Maybe they weren't rational from the data they were getting. Anybody watching Kyle Allen could see what Kyle Allen was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. We already knew what Kyle Allen was. So if we were in evaluation phase it was time to evaluate Will Grier already. And for some reason, he wasn't getting evaluated.
Well,
It's
I
a bit
wish the
mysterious.
Browns did that to Deshaun Kaiser a few years ago.
Right.
They ruined a player.
Well, Hugh Jackson ruined a player.
Yeah.
Ruining Gene, Christian Kirk, is he going to ruin people's week? How important is it that you have a hedge? If you, are you? This is another one of those ones where Christian Kirk just doesn't look quite right against Seattle. Well, we knew he was a game time decision, but it's also Seattle. It's also Kyler Murray. It's also potentially explosive.
Yeah, this might be the toughest one right now this weekend. You know, Derrick Henry and Alexander Madison and some of those others were tough calls earlier in the week, but I think the news is settled enough where we know what's going to happen. Christian Kirk, kind of got rolled up on and then fell on while he was blocking. It was kind of hard to find the play in which was injured, and it was kind of obscured, but it's his right ankle again, and it doesn't look like a typical low ankle sprain. I don't know that it's a high ankle sprain. It might just be more of an inside of the foot type situation. It was nice that he came back after halftime and had a pretty effective second half. He had 2 limited practice this week. It wasn't a particularly violent or put a lot of torque on that ankle necessarily, but it's the same ankle that cost him multiple weeks earlier in the season, and it did look like it was limiting him in practice a little bit. The word for me in Rappaport is that Kirk is going to play, but this could be a situation where it's relatively easily aggravated. Maybe they keep him on the outside a little bit more, and he's not in a situation where it's likely to get tweaked in the same way a running back might struggle through a high ankle injury, but it's something to be concerned about. It's very possible that his snaps could be limited. It's possible that he has an in-game aggravation. I think, in contrast to what we saw earlier this year, where they waited until he was fully healthy, a couple of weeks of limited practice and then full practice before they activated him. That doesn't seem to be the same concern this week, although there wasn't much from the local Arizona media. I think I will buy into Rappaport's report that he's going to play. How much and how effective is a difficult question. If he's active, I think you probably have to have him in the lineup, knowing that there's a little bit lower floor than usual, unless we hear something, leading up to the 1 o'clock game times here that gives you a little bit of an option. If you've got a hedge, I think I'd keep it open if you can make that happen. But, if he's active, I think you roll with him and cross your fingers for the best.
We'll start with Christian Kirk, Matt. If Kirk is active, and Gene, just really quick, because again, just to distill this down to one data point, if you were planning on playing Christian Kirk, how important is it for you to have someone from a late or a night game to swap to?
It's probably too important not to. If this was week 7, you probably wouldn't care, but
right.
You don't want to surprise inactive to burn you.
But you say surprise. In other words, it would be a surprise at this point.
Yes, I think, again, because he's had a couple of limited practice, there's not been any local concern, and Ian Rappaport did, for whatever his tracker. I would have felt better if it was Schefter, but there wasn't a hedge in there like you'll sometimes get with Rappaport, barring pregame whatever needs to be looked at warm-ups, yada, yada, yada. This was expected to play, and he did have a limited practice on Thursday and Friday after coming back and playing from this injury last week. So I would be surprised if he was inactive, but I don't think you can take the risk. Try to have somebody in the late games available if you can.
So for folks that are on the fence about Kirk, so yesterday before the Rappaport tweet, I had to put Kenny Stills in over Kirk because I had nobody. I had Tyrell Williams in the late night games, and it turned out okay. But one way I would break ties against Kirk is that, with the exception of that 3 touchdown game that he hasn't really been a ceiling game player, and I think that it is a good matchup for a ceiling game, but I don't know that he's in tip-top shape. Matt, you're saying thumbs down for Kirk. And also Demir Bird came on last week. Go ahead, Matt.
It's just, he's an inconsistent player. And Are you really going to start an inconsistent player who's been that way all year, who's hurt? No.
So what about this matchup, right? So this one's really fascinating, Matt, because this one really helped me start to get into fantasy projection math. Okay. Here's my new fantasy projection math. There's got to be a way. We're almost in the year 2020. And I know some smart people out there are going to build a machine, some sort of thing that we can do this with, right? Because my insight is this: however you feel about Kyler Murray is basically how you feel about Russell Wilson this week. So for people that have Russell Wilson or kind of questions, or otherwise are projecting the Seattle Seahawks passing game, because people got questions about Metcalf, they got questions about Hollister. Even I've gotten a few questions about Lockett. If you think Kyler Murray is going to play well in this game, then Russell Wilson's going to have to pass more, and it's going to be a great Seattle pass game day. If you think Kyler Murray is going to go up to his first trip to Seattle and be humbled, then it's going to probably be 25 carries for Chris Carson, and we'll see some CJ Prosise and Travis Homer, etc. What do we foresee? Is this going to be, like I said, the Oompa Loompa shootout, or is this another moment, a lesson that a test where Kyler Murray doesn't always have the answers?
See, I think that machine's still in the Rube Goldberg stages, and I think the bowling ball is going to kind of fly off the track there on that one, because I still don't think that they figured out that red zone offense. It's gotten a little better, but they're facing some good linebackers again this week in
Bobby
Seattle.
Wagner going to play in this one, Gene?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So he and KJ Wright, they're good linebackers. I think that what you're going to end up seeing is Kyler Murray can throw the ball a lot and still not score. And then, that could be a situation there. And then also, if you have a pass defense that's as bad as Arizona's, then, Russell Wilson, again, even last week, I mean, they played a really easy run defense, and Russell Wilson had a pretty good day. So I'm thinking that this team I think Seattle's going to have a balanced attack. And I look at this, though, is that Kyler Murray's going to have a good yardage day. Not until next year, pretty much all year, basically, I've looked at this and said, until he proves it wrong, Kyler Murray's a good yardage quarterback, up and down TD quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right to point out that they've moved the ball, but not always finished. So in this matchup, on the temperature check, Matt, Kenyon Drake.
I'm lukewarm.
Yeah, well, and it's important. What I get out of that is don't let last week's 4-touchdown game persuade you too much on that fear of missing out.
Yeah.
What about Jacob Hollister and that Arizona matchup? And we can do a larger discussion of tight ends here, because I'm getting Hollister or Henry. I'm getting Hollister or Cook. I'm getting, you can Hollister or Goddard. How much does the matchup persuade you to break ties in favor of Hollister?
Hollister's in the oven mitt category. I think that he's basically a guy that's going to be pretty hot. But to me, that means that he's a tight end 1. And probably on the low end of that, because it's probably going to be more touchdown dependent than it's going to be big yardage days. So if you have someone like Jared Cook or Hunter Henry, I would probably play Hunter Henry or Jared Cook over them because of the big play element to their games and the volume that comes along with it. Jack Doyle, someone like him, I would start Hollister over Jack Doyle.
What about your guy, Austin Hooper?
I would probably start Hollister over Austin Hooper in this game too, because Matt Ryan, it's just hard to trust what Matt Ryan's going to do and how often they're going to target him.
Jacksonville has that ding dong, the witch is dead feeling, the dead cat bounce of Coughlin being fired. I saw it go around that the first thing they said was all the clocks are right again.
All I know is, I know that you just mentioned Hooper, so I'm having the Niagara Falls moment, but Austin Hooper made the catch of the year last week. And it got overturned. And it got overturned by what I'm going to now call the NBA, the NFL's equivalent. If the NBA did this, that would be called the Larry Bird rule, for like a ball bouncing off of a rim and then going in, and then somehow the officials figuring out a way to discount that and name a rule after him. So that's pretty much how dumb that rule is. Austin Hooper caught that ball. That was a great catch. It
was a great catch. But the football gods saw after it, though. Nothing much on the line football gods wise in this one, Gene. Maybe Dan Quinn's job, I guess. DJ Chark, and Curtis Samuel, we have a similar sort of calculus here, Gene, where it's like if a team's out of it and playing one of these guys, they must be okay, right? I mean, DJ Chark against Atlanta.
I don't think he's okay, but he looked like one of those situations. This is more of a T.Y. Hilton situation where he's okay enough to play and he wants to play, and that's what's going to happen. We went from leaving the locker room on a scooter immobilized a couple of weeks ago to being cleared to running and cut, and then getting a couple limited practices, and then being cleared to play this week. So still within the realm of the window of aggravation for a high ankle sprain, may not be fully effective. Is that going to be enough? It's hard to say.
So he's a Walmart receiver.
Keep the receipt. Okay. Gene.
You break it, you bought it.
Right. It doesn't sound like the Lions are. I'm trying to figure out if my brain's like trying to come up with a witty segue here. It doesn't
I
sound like
haven't slept yet, so I'm just batty right now. That's all.
It's good, Matt. It's so funny, Matt, because I riff about, I'm getting on the couch stuff here when I say this, about how like living down in New Orleans, it's clearer than ever that all the stories about like werewolves and vampires and zombies are really just about us. It's really just about us when we let ourselves get to different extreme states instead of like staying closer to the middle and let other things overwhelm us. And then I think of you and your sleep schedule, and I think like you're like your own story. You know, like this is what happens if you turn into a Matt Waldman. But we get all of the good stuff here. What I was going to say, Gene, is that it doesn't sound like the Lions are going to break Kerryon Johnson. I was flirting with the idea of nudging people toward Johnson, at least as like a what the heck flex, because of those fresh legs and just thinking about what a fresh Kerryon Johnson would look like against a Week 16 defense. How much can we get, or maybe does the uncertainty make us run the other way about all these mixed messages, plus Bo Scarborough in the Lions backfield at Denver?
Right. I think that's the primary question you have to ask is how much will Scarborough play? He sounds like from the reports overnight, sounds like he's going to be active, which is a good sign. And by that being the case, you'd expect him to get somewhere probably between 5 and 10 touches, which would hurt Kerryon Johnson's ultimate upside. But I'm compelled by the fact that they went ahead and activated. And we talked on Thursday that Johnson was sort of, well, it's kind of up to the coaches. If they do it, we're going to go. If not, and I like the fresh legs, and the matchup is not unreasonable as well. So Scarborough wasn't able to play last week with a rib injury. Could be aggravated this week. If Kerryon Johnson looks good and his conditioning is okay, and they want to continue to use him, maybe that split shifts in Johnson's favor even a little bit more. So I think there's probably more upside than downside with Johnson today. I think you're probably going to see him get 10 to 12 touches, and that number could go up based on how Scarborough plays and how Johnson plays and whether or not there's any aggravation. But I don't know that you can plan on him getting to that 15 plus range without something happening within the game to make that more likely to happen.
In the same game, Matt, first of all, Cortland Sutton, just don't even pause. Cortland Sutton automatically in.
Yeah.
Drew Lock. It's like 60 degrees in Denver today too. I don't know what the weather is where y'all are out there listening right now in our chat room, but in Denver on December 22nd, it's going to be beautiful. And Matt gets us into a conversation about boom bust receivers today. Temperature check. Kenny Golladay on the other side of that matchup.
I'm gonna say bust.
Terry McLaurin in the Giants-Washington matchup.
Boom.
Any Giants receivers or any Giants receiver you want to call people's attention to and say, here's a good one, or Gene, Daniel Jones. What kind of Daniel Jones are we going to see today?
He ought to be fine. Fully practiced. Isn't likely to be in a situation where that will be aggravated other than pass rush from Washington being a little bit of an issue.
So what about your Giants receivers? Do you even have an idea of like a pecking order and how high they are among all these other guys?
Well, I'd think about it, but the amount of time that it would take Daniel Jones to think about it in the pocket, you'll probably hear a slap of wood up against his head. So I think that basically I'm staying away from Giants receivers at this point. I know
we were too hard on him though. Here's something we learned. We were too hard on Daniel Jones. Yeah.
No.
Ooh,
no,
it's good. It's just 1 year. No. Save it for Tuesday. Save it for Tuesday. Save it for the offseason. This is going to be good. I like this. I hit a nerve. Ooh. Matt, the last month, Anthony Miller and Allen Robinson, this is what happens when Matt doesn't get to sleep. And who knows how many times on this show he's been on without getting sleep. We go back and listen to all the stuff and try to figure it out. Like, how many hours of sleep did Matt have for this show? Anthony Miller and Allen Robinson have been top 10 fantasy receivers over the last month. Does that mean you're overthinking it? If you're thinking about benching them, with Chicago doesn't have anything to play, Spagnuolo's defense, blah, blah, blah.
They've had nothing to play for a while. So, I mean, really, if you really think about it, I mean, Trubisky looked dead in the water. So I would definitely go with this. Robinson obviously is the go-to guy and he's going to get the volume. But the big thing, too, is that Trubisky's loosening up some, maybe a little too much, but he's throwing the ball and around the park and taking chances. And Miller was slow to learn, apparently, to like the upkeep of the offense. He was slow with his assignments during the summer. Apparently, he's worked his way back into the good graces of the team, and we know what kind of ability he has. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. I'd be better late than never, I guess.
Gene, Baltimore's on a revenge talk about revenge games. This is the two losses were blowout losses somehow. One of them was to Cleveland. No love lost. I know this hits a nerve with Matt Waldman. Just real quickly on the injury front, and I know we're not going to see Myles Garrett, but it's the guy who probably would have been tasked with slowing down Myles Garrett. Ronnie Stanley, the stud left tackle. We're going to see him help Lamar Jackson in his show today.
Yep, he's back to full practice. He's been cleared from protocol. He's going to play.
So has it come to this, Matt? Has it come to this? You're getting giddy. Has it come to this? Go ahead.
I'm just thinking of like Michael Keaton in Multiplicity, and thinking that the Browns are the clone of the clone that they don't leave out of the attic. I think basically, and the Ravens are like the good clone. Yeah, right. I think that's what's going on here.
Moon is another good clone movie, by the way. Highly recommend that.
Oh yeah,
it's a fantastic film.
Sam Rockwell.
It's the best performance of his career, which is saying something. We have not got Odell Beckham's best performance of his career at any point. Is it come to this? Odell Beckham on the bench? I mean, we were talking about, I mean, I think like that this is, again, no fear of missing out, not against these Baltimore corners.
Just think about having a hernia and having to stretch behind you, and then really, really, really far.
The clarity of pain, right?
That, or I'll just take another Daniel Jones wood 2x4 and slap it against the wall, and that'll make you.
I just appreciate that you couldn't resist putting the second "really" into that. Really, really far. You'll have to stretch with certain quarterback.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The only thing there's only a couple of games that we haven't touched on at this point. Cincinnati, Miami, and I should have got Kevin Thompson on to talk about the weather. I know that rain might not be a big deal, but wind is a bigger deal. So actually, I still think that Tyler Boyd is good this week, Matt.
He's a mutter. Let's go with him.
Yeah, and Miami secondary is so bad, and Joe Mixon is definitely a mutter. If theoretically, I know you wrote about weather in the top 10. I think they're talking about 15, 20 mile an hour winds, maybe some gusts. Does that make you back off of Devontae Parker at all this week?
Not really, because I'll probably try and target him at least when the wind's going in their direction. So I think there's still enough opportunities there, and the defense is bad enough that you give it a shot.
Like Parker over Beckham and guys like that. Parker over the Giants receivers. Maybe when it gets to like Parker versus McLaurin and those kind of matchups, that's where you might be like.
Yeah, then you go with McLaurin probably just because of the safety of the targets, and that he actually still runs. He actually knows how to run routes, and Parker still doesn't. They're just throwing it up for him and letting him go after it. So yeah.
How about this, Matt? Let's delve into the 2019 RSP. If you had Derrick Henry in your lineup and you have to go to the waiver wire because you don't like what you had, or your last running back on your bench that you can plug in is Myles Gaskin. What are the chances Myles Gaskin's going to be a player that people remember fondly for the rest of their lives, maybe even get a tattoo of him on their bicep because he helps them win a title today?
That would be kind of fun to see, I guess, as long as it isn't my kid. But
I was drinking coffee when you said that, okay?
But Myles Gaskin, he doesn't have great speed. He has good burst. He's a smart football player who can catch the ball well. He can bounce off hits and run through reaches pretty well. So basically what you have is your garden variety scat back who doesn't do anything extremely special, but he'll make smart plays when they give him the opportunity to put him into the game. And he rarely makes a lot of mistakes. And again, he's a rookie, so that may be a more elevated chance of that happening. But I think that he's the type of guy that you're really looking at, he's like the Baltic Avenue version of James White right now, which isn't really all that exciting. If you don't remember Baltic Avenue on Monopoly, it's that first purple one, that's not worth a whole lot. So you're really desperate there if you're having to pick him up.
Yeah, and it is desperation. I mean, I set it up as desperate. But Gaskin over Laird today, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to have to play a Miami running back. And
Gaskin knows which direction to run. I will say that.
And by the way, I want to point out that coming across the wire right now or earlier while we've been doing the show from Tom Pelissero, Devlin Hodges is going to be on a short leash. And again, I wonder, are we on the cusp of Paxton Lynch starting Steelers quarterback in a playoff game? Just saying, the universe. This is like the ultimate, the joke ending. But we got a couple of minutes for some kind of ending, maybe not a joke. Gene, I know you're in 3 championships. I think the most of any of us here right now. Do you have any? We guided you into the rocks on Gurley versus Mostert last night, so maybe we can just ask the chat room.
I still think.
I know.
Again, had you told me that Nick Bosa, Brenson Buckner, and Eric Armstead were not going to play on early downs, which would allow the Rams a much better chance of moving the ball. The only reason Gurley hit was because he got 2 carries inside the 2-yard line. So nothing wrong with that.
Any you want to put out there into the universe? Any tough calls that you're still worrying, wondering
just
about?
make them up so that we just give you bad answers.
All right, well, you can do it. All right, so then give me 3 bad answers, and I already have a pretty strong lean on all 3 of these. I am playing Devontae Freeman over Dion Lewis because Derrick Henry is out. I don't think there's too much conversation about that.
Lindstrom's playing well, so that's good.
I think it'll be fine. I just PPR situations, Steven Sims, Traquan Smith.
Sims.
Yeah.
Yep, that's where I am too. I'm wavering on this one though. Mike Williams, Marquise Brown.
Williams. Yeah.
Williams.
I'm wavering on that one. That was my initial.
Oh,
probably stick with
Cleveland.
it, but I just feel like better offense, better quarterback.
That's
There's a
fair.
hint
That's
out there
fair.
right now that Lamar Jackson may be trying to find a way to get Marquise Brown a franchise record rookie touchdown catch. That doesn't mean a ton to me, but
no, I hear you.
Just thinking, I don't know.
Phillip Rivers has been kind of
playing upside with downfield receivers, so I don't know. I'm wavering.
I hear
on
you
a little bit.
Look, I'm not.
My decisions were yesterday. I needed to figure out what to do with Gurley, and because I was going with Mike Boone, I needed to figure out what was going on with Gurley and Mostert and Higbee Henry. And so far, not so good on both of those, but.
Yeah, I may have steered folks into the rocks on Higbee because I got a little freaked out.
I like Brown.
I won't fault anybody for wanting to get a piece of Lamar Jackson into their lineup today. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as playing Seth Roberts or Willie Snead, but that's the tiebreaker. And also, what's interesting about this, and Oakland Chargers, the only game I hadn't talked about, is Phillip Rivers looks like a quarterback in the late December, like it's about December 22nd in Phillip Rivers' career right now. Because I don't think he's interested in being a backup. What's really fitting but sad is that I think that Phillip Rivers, I think there's at least a 50-50 chance that the end of the season is the end of Phillip Rivers' career. And we haven't had any fanfare or any farewell tour or anything for Phillip Rivers. But the first time he played Oakland was the first time he looked really old this year. Yeah. He just looked like it wasn't what used to work for him didn't work anymore. And he doesn't have a move now. He doesn't have the defense Peyton Manning had in his farewell tour year to just dial it back and just make those key plays. So we'll see. Well, hopefully we can help you make some key plays. Or if not, as I said, professional scapegoat. I'm here to take the weight for you, folks. And again, Mike Boone's going to have 200 yards and 2 touchdowns because I benched him for James White because I was getting cute and thought I could be conservative.
He's going to break Corey Dillon's record.
He's going to run up the tunnel like Bo Jackson, It's a wonderful thing to get to spend Sunday mornings. It's kind of like a dream come true to get to do a Sunday morning show with my good friends and great football minds, Matt Waldman and Dr. Jene Bramel, and have a fantastic chat room. This year, y'all have been the real MVPs because
for sure.
Someone said something like they're in the cold and the notification comes in that we're on and it's like they come around to warm it up. Well, that's how it is for us. This is a highlight of any day, and this will be our last Sunday morning hangout. Our Thursday night shows are also on ice for now. We come back usually sometime around the combine, I think March. First Thursday in March, we'll be back. Cecil and I have talked about doing more impromptu shows. We'll talk about this stuff, but know that in so much as we go away a little bit for the next month or two, it's not because we don't love this and we love all the time we spend with you and all the ways that we get to be part of your life and have you as part of our lives. Sit back, relax. I know it's going to be hard. Enjoy week 16, enjoy football, enjoy all the excitement. Yesterday was a fantastic slate of games. The NFL is distilling down to what is so compelling, fantasy football aside, but fantasy football can be fun too. Hopefully between the 3 of us, we get at least one title. Hopefully you get at least one title out there. And we always have our little fire to come back to no matter what happens. So thank you, everybody. Always, you are so very, very classy.